Between the Commander ban list updates and Duskmourn releasing officially this week, the market is going absolutely crazy in so many different directions, so let's jump in and take a look at it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you all so much for being here. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the video if you do enjoy it, and then click that bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos are posted. I don't make Market Watch videos a ton, but I do think when a new set releases or when big shakeups happen, it can be fun to cover and kind of dive in a little bit to look at some of the changes, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at, first, the impact of the Commander ban list, which, I mean, there's been so much backlash and back and forth and all kinds of craziness, and I didn't really know how to, like, tackle the follow-up videos for it. I ultimately kind of decided to, more or less stay out of it. I think I kind of made my opinions known in the video I made covering it the other day. I will say, just for the purpose of, I guess, repeating an important point of emphasis, threats of violence and the way people have been acting online is never okay or acceptable. It's honestly kind of embarrassing for, you know, to be part of a community where that happens. I understand that some people did lose value on their stuff, and that does suck, but, you know, at the end of the day, like, it's a game, and if you're choosing to view Magic as an investment, you're already opening yourself up for risk, especially because realistically the only real investments, quote-unquote, that exist within a game like this would be like alpha and beta cards, because even if they do someday abolish the reserve list, those cards will still be worth a crazy amount of money due to how limited they are, but I would think you're better off putting your investments elsewhere. So that's my thing. Don't be a douche. And don't send death threats to people, because that's just unnecessary. But that being said, let's take a look at some of the cards that were impacted. Of course, Mana Crypt has always been a really expensive card regardless, but it has dropped quite a bit. Look at that graph just from the past couple days, around 180 down to 110 at the cheapest. Now, obviously, this card is legal in some other formats. It is legal in Vintage, but you can only play one. It is banned in Legacy, and then it's no longer legal in Commander. So I'm sure it's still going to hold some value, A, because it is a collectible and it has significance in the game, and B, because it is still playable in Vintage. But overall, I mean, its biggest appeal and biggest use was Commander, and for so long it was legal there. So this took a big hit, and it wasn't just the regular versions either. The special guest variants from Ixalan down to about 120. Again, you can just kind of see the graph. I mean, this went up to like 260 something and then has just dropped down significantly. It is it's obviously disappointing for people, but at the end of the day, you know, it is one of those things that happens. I wasn't necessarily of the mindset that Mana Crypt needed a ban. I think while it is a really powerful card, it's okay to have some powerful cards in Commander because the format is so different in terms of the way it functions and being a singleton format and all of that, and there's a lot of cards there that exist that are very strong, but again, I understand, like I said, why the value has dropped, and there's you know, a bazillion different versions of Mana Crypt. If you just, you know, we take just like the quickest look at some of this stuff, you see the Double Masters one down to market price of under 90. I mean, the Masterpiece one is definitely going to hold some value no matter what over time, but even that has been, you know, a bit of a victim here. And then, you know, the Eternal Masters one, which is a little off to the side on the screen here, down to about 110. So that's what you're looking at. It basically cut the price in half, more or less, but if you had your Mana Crypts, I mean, at this point, I do see some people are buying those cards up. I don't know if that's because some people are deciding to, you know, do their own Rule Zero things with their playgroup, but that's kind of where we are with Mana Crypt right now, and obviously a big hit, but not as big of a hit as Jeweled Lotus took, I don't think. So Jeweled Lotus, a huge hit that was around $104, dropped down to about 50, so it's, I guess technically it was quote-unquote cut in half, but Jeweled Lotus now really only has that niche legacy application in the one doubling cube deck, and is around $50 overall. Otherwise, it'll be interesting to watch this card because I don't think it's going to drop to like bulk. It's never going to drop to like 20 bucks, I don't think, because of the fact that it's just such an iconic card, but it's also very hard to get. There's not a lot of it available, and you do have a lot of people with Commander who are going to want to just play their own way. I personally think using the ban list is the way to go, but it doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with the ban list either, so just, you know, some food for thought there as it pertains to Jeweled Lotus. And the textured foil one, of course, took a big hit as well. This was around 550. You could see this started to dip a little in August, though, and then, you know, now is down to about 329. Again, don't think it's going to go that much farther than it already has, but it could continue to steadily drop over time unless there's changes at some point that bring it back, and I don't know what the likelihood of that is. So it just obviously, like I said, it's a feels bad kind of thing, but at the same time, it's like, you got to know that these types of things can happen. The only thing I would have done differently if it were in my shoes would have been to, you know, maybe employ the watch list strategy that people have talked about to say, hey, we're keeping an eye on this card, we're looking towards hitting it with the next update or something. Give people some time to maybe move their stuff and at least have, you know, those who want to play with it have the opportunity to. It's tough to say. Mana Vault, however, has been a huge beneficiary of everything going on here. It is around 120, so it's actually the same price as Mana Crypt now, and it has become ultimately the best fast mana card you can have access to that's legal in the format. Mana Vault has a couple of different printings. The Double Masters one doing really well for itself at 150. This is a massive spike. It's doubled in price almost if you just look at the market rate here. It makes sense. It's a really good card, and it you know, when something goes, something else is going to kind of fill that spot. I'm not shocked by this development, but again, if you had these, you know, and maybe you did take a loss on the Crypts, but maybe you made some gains on this. If there's a cup is half full sort of thing, because Mana Vault at this juncture now, every single copy of it, and there's a lot, has basically broken $100, and obviously we're seeing the Masterpiece one start to rise pretty significantly as well, around $530 at the cheapest. So again, as much as it does suck, there are, you know, some positives to take if you had a good bit of these cards, because some other things have gone up. And also, just a quick note on Dockside. I mean, he's all the way at the bottom now, going from 83 to 30, so a $50 drop. He technically took the biggest hit, but I don't think Dockside has much playability anywhere else. Yeah, I guess maybe some use in Vintage or Legacy. I don't know those formats. I've said that before. I'm certainly not an expert on them, so I really don't know. But what I will tell you is that it is tanked. And I don't know that we're going to see Dockside back anytime soon, but good riddance on that guy, honestly. Kind of a poorly designed card in my honest opinion. But let's take a look at some other stuff that's been moving around on the market. Consigned to Memory just continues to do extremely well for itself at around $7, the cheapest, almost $8. It's a hard counter to the One Ring, which did not get banned, so it's very good in Modern, of course. But I mean, I don't mind it in Commander either. There's definitely some uses where being able to counter a triggered ability or colorless spell, but more specifically for like triggered abilities, can be solid. Just a really good card. If you have this in bulk, hopefully you're aware of its price, because it just continues to go up in price, as does Igra, Eater of All, continues to do well. And I know the graph doesn't exactly indicate it, but if you look at the past month, you'll see a much better representation of how significantly this card has started to move. It's very popular, people really like it, and I think it's just one of those cards that has uses in multiple formats. Interestingly enough, the Borderless is right around the same. I think ultimately it's you know, better investment probably for the Borderless, but it ultimately comes down to your preferences there. Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin is up a lot, and by a lot I mean very significantly. It went from $1 to about 15. I'm gonna guess it has something to do with the new Valgavoth Commander deck, because there's a lot of like individual burn there for 1 life. Cards that kind of work in conjunction with that. Not to mention this card is just part of a billion, you know, OTKs anyway, with cards like All Will Be One. His showcase version, which has just some beautiful artwork, again, massive jump, but interestingly not as much as the regular one. It's around 9, whereas the regular one is much closer, is much higher. I'm curious if there's a reason for that, but maybe some people just aren't as big on the showcase. I really don't know, but it's a cool card. I guess, is the foil higher maybe? No, not even. Foil's around 10. I mean, it's a good deal for a card if you need it. I think the showcase is really nice. I think it's probably a better way to go, personally speaking, but that's just me. Roiling Vortex is also seeing a jump here. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, deal 1 damage to them. I talked about this card in conjunction with Valgavoth when we did the upgrade guide. Just a decent card from Zendikar Rising with a massive spike. I mean, it was like $1 and now it's like $5 almost, but that's a 200% increase over a very short period of time. So if you have this, I would definitely probably try to sell your extra copies sooner rather than later, simply because I think when the hype dies down on the deck and the next thing comes out and everything, people are looking towards, there may be more of this in circulation. I don't think there's a shortage of cards from Zendikar to get. And just on that topic of red, I just want to mention Heartfire Hero quickly is like almost a $3.54 card. I mean, this card is really, really good in Standard, and it's not shocking to see an uncommon do really well. Like, we saw it for Monstrous Rage out of Eldraine. I covered that in a previous video. But there's demand for this, and it's really good. And it's obviously best application is Standard, but it's probably a card you had sitting around in bulk, and it's doing pretty darn well, especially in the past month. If you look at the movement, it started out at $2 and it has doubled. I don't know where the ceiling is for this. I can't imagine it goes too much higher, but you know, depending on what the standard meta looks like, I guess it's a possibility. And Zozu the Punisher is also a red card. This is more tied into the Valgavoth deck, but it's gone up a lot. Especially if you look at the graph, it was 690, now it's around 12, and the lowest is about 35 for near mint out of the dual decks. Again, it has to do with triggering Valgavoth's ability on other players' turns, so they take damage, and then you get the draw and the pluses. It's a good card with not a lot of prints. The only other print is Champions of Kamigawa, and that one is not cheap either. I don't have the foil. It's set to foil, but the nearest mint, I suppose, is that a term, is $24 out of Champions. So, really good card. Probably a card you might have had bulk or laying around, and is seeing a lot of demand right now. And then Zur the Eternal Schemer, also doing really well because of the new enchantment deck. A card out of Dominaria has always been about $1. It's now about $7. People are making some listings, I think, trying to sell them, although this person does have not the best rating. But at least like $4 or $5 for this card. It's pretty good, and I think the enchantment deck is obviously going to make good use of it. In terms of that. And then lastly, before I get into the Duskmourn stuff, just Trouble in Pairs, another card I wanted to mention, has started to go up a little bit. I might have missed the peak on this because it kind of looks like it actually started to go up about 2 or 3 weeks ago and then has dropped a bit. Still way more expensive than I realized, but obviously with Murders at Karlov Manor not being the most well-received set, it makes sense that some stuff in there would kind of move in value. Couple things out of Duskmourn. Razorkin Needlehead. The official pre-release thing won't be lifted till tomorrow, so you will see these prices drop more as things are lifted. However, it's around $12 after being about $2, $3. So this card's wicked good. It's probably going to be good in the Valgavoth deck too. But obviously it has some really good combos with Ob Nixilis that we just talked about, and I think that's still standard legal too. But this card I think it's a really good card. I pulled a couple out of my packs. Interestingly, the Borderless one is actually doing well for itself, but not significantly compared to the other one. It's around 13 with that one listed at 1050. Just a good card to keep an eye on. This, again, is going to drop, obviously, once people start to list more stuff, but I don't think it drops back to $1 where it was, and that's the interesting part about these pre-sale spikes that happen, because it's basically, you're going to be seeing some value increase one way or another on these cards. Overlord of the Hauntwoods, I've talked about this card before. It's extremely good, I think. I think all the Overlords are good, but this card is hugely good. It is up a ton on pre-sales with $25 at the cheapest. This card was like 13. It felt so undervalued, but I didn't want to like say that because like it's pre-sale and then it's hard to gauge where things are at with pre-sale. And obviously I think this will dip, but if you did pre-order this in the $12 range when it was there, you might have done really well in terms of getting it at a good price. Especially because, and I'm doing this live editing thing again, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, his showcase version is just through the roof. $72 for the showcase version of this card at the moment, and it was as low as $27 just a couple days ago. So again, pre-release prices, it will drop, but it's not going to drop back to where it was. And I think people are seeing how good this card really is for so many different decks. Same with Valgavoth here. Obviously not the same level of spike, but about $30 after being down to almost, what, it hit 13 at one point. So, you know, just a card that I think, again, you'll see a lot more copies hitting the market, without a doubt, but it's still a really, really good card, and it's extremely strong in terms of its actual playability. I don't know how it's going to fare in Standard, if there's ways to get it out. I know there's Reanimator decks that can do it, but across the board, this card is just, don't sleep on this. If you see a price point you're comfortable with once the release happens, I would grab it sooner rather than later, because I do think, while it's nowhere near as good as Sheoldred, let's just put that out there, it could follow a similar trajectory to Sheoldred where it's much cheaper and then ends up going up. I don't think it'll hit Sheoldred rates, but you never know, I guess. And what I wanted to shout out real quick, this is just me personally looking at this card, Silent Hellcreeper. It feels like a really strong card. It's an enchantment creature, so it's got 2 types for Delirium if you're playing that color combination. And then it can't be blocked, and when it deals damage, you can do all kinds of things, either put counters on it, draw a card, or make it a copy of another creature you control. A lot going for that there, and I think it might have some uses in various formats. It's only a $2 card. I could just be thinking with, like, my brain of cards that I've seen start to go up in the past, but for a 2-drop, this seems like it's going to have some application somewhere. So if you happen to be interested in this card and you see it when the pre-release is actually lifted, it might be a worthwhile pickup if it's a card you think. This is just one I wanted to shout out as my own personal pick that seems to be a little bit undervalued, and it's kind of dirt cheap, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this go up a little bit more in the future. That being said, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think of the market changes. Are you eyeing anything for Duskmourn as the official thing comes up tomorrow? If there's enough movement with the market tomorrow, I will make a follow-up video, but I think at this point we've kind of covered a lot of the stuff that's moving, and we'll have to wait and kind of see how Duskmourn is performing. But that's going to do it for today's video. Remember, don't bully people online because your cards got banned, okay? Peace.